The campaign for LGBT equality is a cultural phenomenon that may feel like a unique struggle to some, especially amidst claims that this isn't discrimination, rather the preservation of traditional marriage. But in the context of Christianity, it is simply one of many inevitable political battles resulting from cultural obsolescence. In other words, moral understanding and political ideology does and should change over time. Here's a reminder of some of the cultural battles Christianity has fought and lost over the past few centuries. Usury, or interest on loans, is forbidden in the Old Testament, and its ban was supported by Christian theologians like St. Anselm of Canterbury and St. Thomas Aquinas. In 1516, the ban on usury was officially lifted in Europe. Penalties against witchcraft is also depicted in the Old Testament and resulted in witchcraft acts being passed in Europe. These penalties were supported by the Bishop of Lincoln, William Chatterton, and the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland. In 1735, the Witchcraft Acts were repealed in Scotland. The promotion of heliocentrism was prohibited by the Catholic Church in Europe. In 1822, Pope Pius VII permits books that discuss the heliocentric model of the solar system. Passing the 13th Amendment outlawing slavery in 1865 was met with opposition from the South. For example, 19th century Presbyterian pastor Robert Dabney. Every hope of the existence of church and state and of civilization itself hangs upon our arduous effort to defeat the doctrine of Negro suffrage. As well as president of the South Carolina Baptist Convention, Richard Furman. The right of holding slaves is clearly established in the Holy Scripture, both by precept and example. The passing of the Edmunds Anti-Polygamy Act in 1822 resulted in resistance and the conviction of several defiants, including Rutger Clausen, Angus Cannon, Abraham Cannon, John Sharp, and Herbert Grant, all of whom were respected LDS church leaders. Prior to 1920 and the passing of the 19th Amendment allowing women's suffrage, the Massachusetts Congregationalist clergy issued a letter condemning female anti-slavery activists, stating, "The appropriate duties and influence of women are clearly stated in the New Testament. Those duties and that influence are unobtrusive and private." Reverend John Williams of the St. Barnabas Episcopal Church said, "God meant for women to reign over home, and most good women reject politics because women's suffrage would destroy society." The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was met with resistance from people like Pastor Bob Jones Sr., who said, "God never meant for America to be a melting pot to rub out the line between the nations. God put Africans over there," as well as Professor W.M. Caskey. "Our Southern segregation way is the Christian way. God was the original segregationalist." Deuteronomy 7 forbids marrying a person of another faith. In 1976, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights drafted Article 16, which grants men and women the right to marry without restrictions on race, nationality, or religion. Exodus 35:2 declares that those who work on the Sabbath should be put to death. Yet all that remains in modern times are remnants of blue laws, which retains a limited restriction on alcohol sales, gambling, hunting, and car dealership operation on Sundays. In 2015, the United States Supreme Court ruling on Obergefell v. Hodges established precedent that legally recognizes same-sex marriage, which is in conflict with Leviticus 18:22 and Leviticus 20:13. Seeing as how the vast majority of these 10 examples are overwhelmingly accepted as entirely non-controversial, even though at one point they were indeed highly disputed, are we simply experiencing yet another example of biblical incompatibility with modern culture? Or is this battle against marriage rights for homosexuals going to eventually be the first victory for Christian morality? Because thus far your religious leaders have an unimpressive track record when it comes to interpreting your so-called inerrant scripture.
The Bible calls them beasts!